Right, friends, it is 6:03 on December 14th. We officially call this meeting of the Westminster Inclusivity Board to order, seeing that we do have a quorum in the virtual sense. Welcome all. I hope you've had a lovely few days. I hope everyone was able to navigate the blizzard that we had recently in the past day or two. I mean, it was pretty rough for people east of maybe the airport, but for us, we kind of dodged that. So we have some guests and a lot of agenda items, so we're going to move right into it. First and foremost, we would like to welcome our guest, Councilmember Curtis Gardner from the city of Aurora, who is here to really kind of frame a discussion of how Aurora has repealed the city's tax on essential hygiene products, and also discussing a little bit about the impacts of the revenue on the city since implementation. So Councilmember Gardner, welcome. We are so glad to have you. Thank you for being here with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. Again, I'm Council Member Curtis Gardner from the city of Aurora. I'm a at-large council member, so I represent the whole city, and then I also am our mayor pro tem right now as well. And yeah, so do you want me to just kind of go into what we did and then can do questions after that? Is that kind of, will that work for you all?
Yeah, that would be great, and we can then kind of just have that time toward the end for questions and discussion. We would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So going back to 2021, I sponsored an ordinance in the city of Aurora to remove sales tax from period products. So, more commonly known as feminine hygiene products, menstrual products. There's several different phrases out there, but we, at the time, we're receiving roughly $600,000 in annual revenue from those products. And what I learned from this process for both menstrual products as well as for diapers that I'll get to in a second, retailer POS systems were already coded to segregate those items out, which made it a lot easier to track. And so in Aurora, we have a business advisory board that we bring ordinances to that have an impact on the business community. And so I had brought that ordinance to our business advisory board, and they supported it mainly because there wasn't really an impact on the business community since POS systems were already programmed to segregate those items out. So that, like I said, was in early 2021. So going on 2 years ago, almost about 18 months ago or so. Oh, did I go on mute? Earlier this year, I sponsored an ordinance to exempt diapers, both infant and adult diapers, from sales tax collection. The revenue from that was roughly $500,000. So between the two items, it was about 1.1 million. And similarly, like I mentioned before, with the menstrual product exemption, I did bring that ordinance to our business advisory board, and they voted unanimously to support that as well. Again, because those products were already segregated out in POS systems. Fast forward from, and I should say, after that ordinance passed early this year, it made Aurora the first city in Colorado to fully exempt both diapers, adult and infant diapers, as well as period products from sales tax collection. Fast forward a couple of months after that, I believe it was in May of this year, the state legislature passed a bill exempting those products from sales tax collection as well at a statewide level. Part of that legislation required municipalities, if they so choose, if their elected officials so chose, to exempt those products as well, because that legislation only exempted the state portion of the sales tax from collection. They didn't have the ability to impact the city sales tax. So we had already had that process completed, like I described in Aurora, of course, but I've been really encouraged over over the summer and into the fall. I've spoken with several other cities that are now undertaking similar initiatives. In June of this year, Denver became the second city in Colorado to fully exempt both. I know Fort Collins has exempted as well, and several other cities have either passed an ordinance or are working on something similar. For us, I think there's obviously the revenue piece of it, right? $1.1 million is not an insignificant amount of money. Our budget is roughly 900 million, so it's not it's not a significant portion of our budget, but it's also not insignificant. And so I really approached it from the standpoint that these are medically necessary products. And in Aurora, we have a whole list of medical products that we exempt from sales tax collection. And in my mind, these products fell under that category or that umbrella. And I think, from the perspective of kind of the pushback that I got, the one criticism, I guess, that I heard, or maybe not even a criticism, but the kind of the argument that I heard was, well, it's not a big amount, so what's the big deal? But I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. The amount that a family might spend on diapers in a month could be a dinner, a top ramen dinner for a family. It could be any number of things. And on the topic specifically of menstrual products, so Aurora, for context, sits in primarily two school districts, Aurora Public Schools and Cherry Creek Schools, and talked to some administrators in both of those districts, and heard some stories of little girls coming to school using plastic bags in place of tampons and things like that, wash rags, and because their family weren't able to afford them, and obviously exempting them from our I don't know 3.25% sales tax is small, but it can, I think, go a long way for making a difference for a family, especially over the last couple of years when we've seen such big increases in costs for consumers just for a variety of goods. So that was, I think, really the main pushback that I got. But the period product, the menstrual product ordinance, passed our council unanimously, so 10-0. The diaper sales tax exemption was a little more controversial. Ultimately, ended up passing 6-4. So obviously we have a 10-person council, and so, but yeah, just really proud. I think that Aurora was the first city to do that, to be a leader on it, and I think it kind of should go without saying, but I think it's a signal to families in our city that we recognize that these products are necessary. They're not optional. Women can't go without menstrual products. Babies can't go without diapers. Old people, in some cases, can't go without diapers. And so, it was really a way to help families in our community. And so really proud to have been the first city to do that. So like I mentioned before, Denver, Fort Collins, and several other jurisdictions have either passed it since then or are working on something similar. And, I've talked to several other city council members in other cities and groups like this as well. And, just really excited, I guess, that there seems to be kind of a groundswell of momentum in this direction, and a recognition that these products are essential and not optional. So I think that's kind of my introductory comments, and happy to answer any questions or provide further comments if there's anything else.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We appreciate that overview. I guess I have a question around, like you said, that there was some pushback around, it's such a little amount. And I think, to your point, like a little amount goes a long way for families and, single parents and, our populations who are on fixed incomes that maybe, while things around them are increasing in cost, that their income is not for whatever reason. How has the reception been for those who maybe have pushed back on this? Like, you passed it, I think you said 6-4. Is that correct with your
Yeah,
council?
the diaper exemption was 6-4. Yeah.
So has there been further discussion around the effectiveness of it? Has it been well received? Like I guess, have you kind of converted some of the people that maybe were pushing back initially?
Yeah. So, it was funny because some of the people that I was getting pushback from on my council were, I would call, I don't want to be political, but we're right of center. And typically we're opposed to taxes. And the argument they kind of gave me in this case was, they didn't like targeted tax cuts. They wanted kind of more wide-ranging tax cuts, and the amount was so small, or relatively small, depending on your perspective. I think for me, the amount of the tax cut isn't an effective argument against it. To me, it's more signaling that we recognize that these products are medically necessary. And I will say, so going back to the timeline, we passed both of these before the state did. So it was maybe a little bit more controversial, or kind of, being on the leading edge is sometimes a little bit more challenging. I think now that the state has passed this legislation and is not collecting it, at least from the state perspective, it kind of seems like a no-brainer to me, that a jurisdiction would not collect sales tax, for several different reasons. But for your tax office, just for complexity purposes, I think it would be a lot easier. But yeah, specific to your question, I've talked to several council members since the second ordinance originally passed earlier this year, and there's been a recognition that it was the right thing to do, and probably not something that I should that they should have opposed.
Great, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem DeMont, thank you. You have a question, and then I see Steve's hand.
Yeah. First, thanks for being with us tonight. I appreciate your time. I know how busy you are. So, with that being said, I'm just curious, kind of a couple of functional things that you saw. But first, before I ask that, you said your guys' sales tax is 3.2. Is that?
I believe it's 3.25%.
So your split wise for the city of Aurora, do you is most of your revenue based off of sales tax, or do you have a fair amount for property tax? I don't know what your guys' property, so I'm trying to understand kind of the
no, I don't know the exact percentage, but I believe over 90% of our revenue is from sales tax.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. I can look into the other part. I just was, if you had it off the top of your head. So then you had mentioned, and so I'm IT by day is what I do. So
okay.
The sales systems I'm familiar with and how they might do that. And I imagine that's probably, if that's good to hear that was more the case than the exception. I'm sure depending on what point of sale system might have had trouble. But as far as functionally roll out, and if I missed it, I apologize. I had to drop off for a second, but how long did you guys give retailers to kind of roll it out, and what did that look like in the communication? Because I'm just thinking functionally, like the places that sell, say, either of those products. You're talking every 7-Eleven or personally owned little shopping, corner shop or anything like that, or even I would suppose even like hotels and stuff. So what did that look like with rollout?
Yeah, so that's always the most challenging part for something like this, right? Because like you said, there's going to be, in a lot of cases, some smaller retailers that aren't watching our Monday night city council meetings, as exciting as they might be. And so several things. So I guess for timeline purposes, ordinances in Aurora take effect 30 days after second reading. And so those products were exempt from sales tax 30 days. So there was kind of that 30-day period. Now, as far as communication, we did several things. We used social media. we used our tax and licensing office because they had in a lot of cases had good contact information, specifically email for businesses, and so there was communication sent out through our tax and licensing office that there was an update to POS systems, and so to answer how long we gave people, it was about 6 months before we kind of wrote a hey, you need to update your POS system type of letter. I don't want to say threatening, but just a little bit more serious in tone. And so we certainly were flexible with retailers in ensuring that they had the opportunity to make this change, because POS system updates and that type of thing do take a little bit of time, as you probably know, with what you do. And so we kind of had a drawn out period where we allowed people to get into compliance.
And then I guess on the other end of that, obviously it's good to take the carrot approach, but like if folks still aren't abiding by it, or you find out, is there like some sort of like what's the remedy for it? If you find out 6 months later people are still not.
Yeah. So we have, and I don't want to guess off the top of my head, but we have a fine in our municipal code for not complying with our sales and use tax laws. So it's, relatively nominal, maybe $250 or something like that for a first offense. But I had checked in a couple days ago in preparation for this with our tax and licensing office, and we have not assessed that penalty. So I'm not aware of any retailers that haven't made the necessary changes.
Okay. And then the only other question I had, you kind of alluded to it. So like the feminine products and the diapers, I know are two that have been talked about a lot, as you mentioned, at the state level. Were there any other products that you guys evaluated as you were going through this, or how did you kind of draw that line?
No, I would say there have been additional conversations since then. Are there other, I guess, similar type of products? And when I say similar, I mean medically necessary, but that are assessed a sales tax. We have a pretty long list of products that are not assessed sales tax that kind of fall under that medical umbrella. And in a lot of cases, there are acceptable alternatives that aren't assessed a sales tax. In the case of diapers and menstrual products, there really aren't alternatives, right? You either have a diaper or you don't. You either have a tampon or a feminine hygiene pad, or you don't, or that type of thing. And so I think that was kind of that dual prong, that A, they were medically necessary, and B, there was not an acceptable alternative.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much. And again, I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem DeMott. Thank you, Mr. Curtis. And we'll move to Steve, and then I see Alan's hand up. Steve, please.
Thanks, Curtis, for briefing us on this. Sounds like a really excellent ordinance that maybe Westminster will pursue. Question I had was, should we package all those, as you described, the medically necessary products into one ordinance? And what that follow-up question is do you guys have a model ordinance that would be shareable so that, Westminster doesn't have to go through all the same hoops to do something?
Yeah. So yes, to answer the second question first. So there's kind of a coalition of organizations that worked on this at the state level. And I shared my ordinance with them. And then I've also shared it with several other cities since then. It was really easy how we did it. And we did it this way to make it replicable at other cities. But basically, our tax code has a list of exemptions, and it has, groceries, and then it defines what groceries are, and kind of goes through all those. And so really all we did was add in diapers and then put in the definition, and it was literally a sentence or two about, a product used to help people that can't control their bowel movements or something to that effect. And then same with menstrual products, is it was a very simple definition to say, here's what menstrual products are. And so, depending on how your tax code is written, they are easily replicable. I know, because I worked with the council members in Denver when they passed the ordinance. They essentially copied our ordinance and just brought it up to speed, if you will, with their terminology, for lack of a better term. So yes, and I'd be happy to share that. I don't know if maybe I could send it to Michelle, if you all want that, but I'd be happy to share those ordinances with you. As far as the first part of the question, because now it has passed at the state, my recommendation would be, yes, to do it as one ordinance, and whether you call it dignity products or whatever phrasing you might use. My recommendation would be to do it at the same time. For several reasons, but first off, because I think they both fall under, like I said, that category of medical necessity and not an acceptable alternative, as well as they were packaged together at the state. So I think that kind of makes more sense.
Okay, good. A quick follow-up. Have any groups or organizations within Aurora, I guess I would say, assisted with some of these issues related to low-income folks who can't afford products and began collection programs or things like that to provide that?
Yeah. So there's several groups that operate in Aurora. There's several groups that operate statewide. I'm sure that also operate within Westminster as well, but that can provide free or low cost diapers, free or low cost menstrual products. I know Denver Public Schools now offers menstrual products for free in all their restrooms, and I think several other school districts have since followed suit. So yeah, there are several organizations out there that kind of provide these products for free or low cost.
Okay, great. Thank you, Steve. Alan, please.
Yes, thank you, Counselor. And I think what you've done is in Aurora is terrific. I'm glad it's also statewide. In Aurora, do you have taxes on food, and do you have tax on clothing?
We do not tax groceries, but yes, we do tax clothing.
So if I just could be the devil's advocate here, did you have any co-counsels, counselors, or pushback from any residents who would have said, well, this is a slippery slope, because what about taking food as a necessity, clothing as a necessity?
Yeah, I did hear that from some folks that, if we're going to start here, what else are we going to exempt? And, I certainly recognize that possibility for a slippery slope. I still think this is the right thing to do. But yeah, I definitely acknowledge that that's a possibility, or that's a risk out there. I think, for me, the kind of the medical necessity, in addition to not an acceptable alternative. So for example, with clothing, there's a wide variety of prices in clothing. So maybe if you can't afford this brand, there's a cheaper, there's lots of different options to consumers. Whereas typically pricing for these products are pretty standard, across the different brands, because there's just not a lot of variation. They are what they are, right? And so, I think it was kind of both of those things that overcame that argument. And like I said, I think it was the right thing to do. But yeah, certainly, I did hear that from some folks for sure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Any other questions for Mayor Pro Tem Gardner? All right, thank you so very much for your time, and thank you for helping to spearhead this work, not only for us as we start navigating maybe our next steps, but also at the state level. We really appreciate your leadership and your advocacy for what really amounts to a human rights issue. And I think, to your point, the access to, these supplies they're a matter of survival, not luxury. So
Yeah.
we
Well,
appreciate.
I appreciate the invitation. Really glad to have the opportunity to talk with you all. And like I said, I will send the model ordinances over to Michelle, so she has those, and whoever she wants to share those with is fine by me. And always happy to jump back on if you want to talk any further about it. Always happy to do that. But really appreciate the invitation.
Thank you so much. We appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner.
Have a good night. Bye bye.
Take care. All right. Thank you. And thank you, Michelle, for putting us in that contact. We definitely appreciate you. Moving on to our next agenda item, we have our Assistant City Attorney, Mr. Munch, here to give us sort of an overview around Cora and open meetings law, just as a reminder for all of us in the event that I, as your chair, misstep. So thank you very much.
Thank you all for having me. I apologize. I had a little bit of trouble logging on today, so hopefully I didn't disrupt you guys' order of operations while anybody was waiting for me. This Cora, really, I should do this more often, is what it comes down to. Cora is something that trips up a lot of people. It trips up a lot of people in all areas of our government, not just boards and commissions, but we constantly have to be educating people on the existence of this law. So no one should take it personally or anything that we're here to give a refresher. Trust me, I give regular refreshers to pretty much everyone in the city. I'll try to keep it brief, and I'll try to talk as little like a lawyer as possible. And of course, if anybody has any questions, let me know. But at its core, it's actually pretty simple. And it's particularly simple as it applies to the Inclusivity Board, because there's just really not, there's a lot of moving parts to it. It can be a complicated law, but that's not going to end up being your problem. Essentially what Cora is, and you see me already falling into it, I just say Cora. It's the Colorado Open Records Act. It is the open records law of the state of Colorado, and it applies to local municipalities. Every state has one of these. The federal government has one of these. They can differ a lot from one another. The federal one in particular is something we spend a lot of time on in law school, just because law professors are kind of mean-spirited that way. But a lot of people misunderstand what the Open Records Act fundamentally is. A lot of people can make the mistake of assuming that the Open Records Act lists certain things that are open records that people can have access to. In fact, it is the opposite. What the federal one works a little bit like that, but what the Colorado Open Records Act says is all records, everything that is maintained or kept by the city, absolutely everything, is an open record. And then it lists some narrow exceptions. What it does is it lists those very few things that are not open records and the narrow circumstances under which we don't give them over. So the presumption is always in favor of giving over records that are in possession of the city. The definition is quite broad of what those records are. So essentially, we have to go forward assuming everything is discoverable and able to be given over to the people. Not just because it is written in the law, and that is very much the stated intention of the legislature, but our city council has also made it very clear on their own that they want this. Transparency is a big priority for this city council, the last city council. Honestly, every city council I've interacted with in my time at the city of Westminster considers transparency to be important. And that backs up the idea that everything is presumed to be public. Now, there are exceptions, of course. We have certain things that are critical security infrastructure. We're not going to, give people a guide on how to execute a terrorist attack on, a building, things like that. We've got personnel files. There's certain information, but all of that is listed in the Open Records Act. The nice part is you don't have to know about the exceptions. It's not going to be your problem. That's going to be my problem. That's going to be the city clerk's problem. And there's really just not that much that the Inclusivity Board is going to generate that might approach any of those exceptions. You have to assume, as the Inclusivity Board, that anything you create in the course of your being a member and serving on this board is something that anyone and everybody can get access to and can see. The only possible exception really is, I mean, there are certain information about you all that we're not going to give out. If we have your home address, your personal phone number, we're not going to give that out. But anything you create, as far as it's really, conversations with the city attorney's office seeking legal advice, that's really the only thing that might fall under a core exception that you're going to interact with. Here's why this comes up, because we get core requests all the time that are very broadly stated because people don't always trust. They're looking for one document, and a lot of times we'll get, because they're looking for one document, we'll get a request that says, I want all correspondence written by anybody to anybody. Because sometimes people just don't trust the government. I can't imagine why, I don't know, but anyways, they will say that, and that will encompass a huge swath of emails, and sometimes that can be your emails. So really what this comes down to is email. That's the main thing you need to be aware of. That's the main thing you need to be concerned about. Now, what I keep telling people is CORA is really not something to be scared of. We can still do our jobs. We've been doing our jobs in this state for a long time under the auspices of the Open Records Act. You simply have to do what your parents always told you to. Before you write something down, really think to yourself, write every email on the assumption that the Denver Post, your neighbor, and your children can read it, and your parents. Everybody in the world is going to be able to read your email if they want to. That doesn't stop you from writing an email. If something needs to be said, by goodness, it needs to be said. Just be aware that nothing you're saying is private in the course of your actions on the Inclusivity Board and what you're doing for the Inclusivity Board. Everybody can read it all. It's going to be the very, very rare circumstance where that isn't a public record. Now, there's a lot more to it. I could talk a lot if anybody's sort of intellectually curious about the mechanisms of the Open Records Act. But as far as the Inclusivity Board goes, that's actually about all you need to know. It's largely emails and reports that you are likely to generate. Emails and reports from this board are all going to be public record, and you have to write them assuming anybody can read it. So, does
And
anyone have
Matt,
any? Yeah.
you can clarify that it's not a city address, right? It's not just our city email addresses, that because this is a volunteer board and they use their personal email addresses, that's where we want to be extra aware of what we're sending.
Yes. Thank you very much for bringing that up. I did leave that out, and that is very important. I'm used to dealing with the city council and with city employees who always are going to be sending and receiving emails from their own or from city email addresses. That makes life a lot easier when we get these sorts of requests that say, I want any and all correspondence, because when somebody asks for any and all correspondence from city council about this, that, and the other, it doesn't become Mayor Pro Tem DeMont's problem. Our IT department, because it's a city email address, can just go in and get that email, and he doesn't have to do anything. Unfortunately, it's a little more complicated with you. The Open Records Act does not make a distinction between what is done on a city email address versus what is done on a private email address. Instead, what makes something subject to the Open Records Act is whether it is done in the course of sort of running the government. It's whether it's the words it actually uses are whether it involves the payment and the use of public funds. That's everything. However little there are, public funds are what allow us to have this Zoom meeting. Public funds are what allow the Inclusivity Board to exist. So anything you're doing in the Inclusivity Board falls under CORA. Now, the way we get around this is most of the time when we get a request for something that the Inclusivity Board or a member of the Inclusivity Board has sent in the course of their acting on the Inclusivity Board, it's going to be something where to or from a city staff member, a city council member, we're going to be able to access that through IT. Because if it's literally just one of you emailing another one, that has a better chance of either not being asked for or not really being part of your service on the Inclusivity Board, but it could. Now, there is an exception under CORA for personal email addresses, and we don't give out your personal email addresses when we receive a core request, but we do redact it in such a way that whoever gets that record can tell who you are, who said what, because that's what the public's asking to know when they ask for your correspondence. They want to know what you said and who said what to whom, and they have that right. So it's helpful most of all to you if when you're sending these sorts of emails to include Cody or someone else on the email, that way there is a city email address that has access to it, and we don't have to come to you and have IT get access to your computer to get access to an email that you sent in the course of your service on the Inclusivity Board. Trust me, that's a pain. You don't want to do it. IT doesn't want to do it. We don't want to be anywhere near your computer if we can avoid it. But yes, the fact that you're using personal email addresses is not going to insulate it from being open records. You have to assume every email you send involved in your service as the Inclusivity Board. Doesn't mean we get all your emails to your family, but anything you do as part of this board is an open record. I see I have a hand up. Mr. Pfeiffer.
Yeah, thank you. So you sort of touched on it, but I just want to get it more explicit. It doesn't matter if it's what going from me to one other person, that is still discoverable under Cora. Is that correct? Or does it have to be to a number of people on the board?
It doesn't matter. That's it's a very easy thing to get confused about. It doesn't matter how many people are involved. What matters is it part of your work for the government? Is it about your service? Is this an email being sent that is part of your sitting on the Inclusivity Board? Or is you guys can email each other all you want. You can go hang out, have coffee after work, any of that. That has nothing to do with the Inclusivity Board and has nothing to do with Cora. So if the subject of the email is something about the Inclusivity Board, then yes, it falls under Cora. And if the only place those emails exist is on your private email address, then it could be a problem if someone happens to send us a request that encompasses the subject of that email. So best practice is, do your work for the Inclusivity Board in public. Do it where everybody, because you probably want everybody on the Inclusivity Board to be able to read it anyways. You probably want your staff representative to know what's going on anyways. So it's just best to have, it saves you a lot of trouble if when you're doing something about the Inclusivity Board, make sure that there's a staff member CC'd on the email. And if not, hey, Cody and I don't need to know when you guys are going out for coffee if it's not about Inclusivity Board. Did that answer your question?
It did, thank you. And if I can ask one other, how would we know if something is going on that our emails might be needed under a Cora request? Would we get an email from you saying we need emails on this, or how
Yes.
would we know?
I can speak from personal experience. Yes, you will get an email requesting open records Cora. So
Got it.
You'll hear
Thank
from
you.
myself, the city clerk, or from Cody.
Okay.
Depending on the nature of the request. You should know, like I said, Cora it exists. It can be irritating at times. It causes people, there's everybody working for the city would rather be doing something else with their time than hunting down Cora emails. It's really nothing to be afraid of. It's something we work around with these, and the citizens have a right to know. And if we're putting something in an email that we don't want the citizens to know, that's probably all the more reason the citizens ought to know about it. Okay, I have another question.
Alan, your hand. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Matthew. I'm a bit confused here because I thought during the orientation, and I'm thinking if you were the one who delivered it when we were in the city council chambers regarding Cora, that I understood that one person can talk to one person, even if it's about something the Inclusivity Board or something that I might want to say to a counselor. I thought one-on-one was fine, but it's when you add a second or a third person to the group. That's what I took away from the orientation. Is that incorrect?
You're thinking, it's almost correct. You're thinking of the Open Meetings Law as opposed to the Open Records Act. The Open Records Act encompasses any record kept or maintained by the city in the course of public business. The Open Meetings Law is different. The Open Meetings Law really doesn't concern itself that much with records, although it does, emails become an issue with the Open Meetings Law because meetings can be virtual and it applies to virtual meetings. So two people can have a conversation and it doesn't trigger the Open Meetings Law. But if it is a record that is generated that involves public business, it does fall under the Open Records Act, and something can do both. Something can be both, constitute essentially a public meeting and a open record. Now, most of the time, those emails are not going to be open meetings because they're not making, and there's definitions. I actually have it called up here. This is why I'm going to look off to the side for a second at the second monitor. The Open Meetings Law talks about meetings where a position, rule, regulation, formal action is going to occur. So that may or may not actually be in an email. Point is, something can be both. But what you're thinking of, the situation where if you have just two people, is something that might not trigger the Open Meetings Law. But anytime a document is generated, be it virtual or handwritten on a piece of paper, that's going to fall under the Open Records Act. Did that answer your question?
Thanks for the clarification. Yes.
Easy thing to get confused about. Mr. Brockman.
Matt, quick question. Has there been any thought or consideration given to providing volunteer board members a city email, basically address in order to keep easier track of these communications between people?
There has been, I do believe that is something that they are looking into because there are a lot of advantages to that.
Yeah, I would think so.
So I can't tell you where that is in process. I can tell you that I do know that that is being discussed. Cody,
Yeah.
you might know more than I do.
Well,
We're talking about the chairs and the very least having one, because then that's also a way for the public to contact the board through the chair. So because there are a couple, I think about 100-ish volunteers, that's a lot for IT to take on. So we thought we might start small in the chairs with getting them all a city. So there might be a generic one that says something like inclusivity board at cityofwestminster.us or something of that nature. They are talking about it. The clerk's office is leading that charge with IT. We don't quite have a solution yet, but it's certainly something we've been talking about and I know is on their priority list.
Hey, Cody, real quick, just to
Yes, sir.
put a note down. Can you, if they're going to do that, can they make sure, and they probably already are, but just a thought, that they go through that security training that we did?
Oh,
So-
yeah, that's a really good idea. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a 45-minute email security training that everybody who has a city email address is, staff is required to do it. And I think we had a full council participation this year, which is a really big deal for us. So it's really important to cybersecurity. But it's about 45 minutes of your time. So if we do that, we'll certainly roll that in too. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
That training is good and it will do nothing but help you in your personal lives too, because all of the spam and phishing and everything that I get on my work computer, and I get a lot of it, I get just as much on my personal email. So that training is nothing but good.
Yep, I agree.
Good.
great.
Any other questions about the Open Records Act? Like I said, I could talk about it all day. It's got all sorts of goofy exceptions, and I love doing legal research, so it's something I've actually kind of enjoyed getting into. But yeah, basically the bottom line is everyone can read your emails. Write your emails on the assumption that everyone in the world's going to read it. That's not a reason not to, you ought to be doing that anyways. Before you hit send, give it thought and say, do I actually want to phrase it this way? And there we are. If no one has any other questions, then Cody, I think that
No,
Okay.
I have one more topic, which is public meetings and virtual meetings and what constitutes one of those. I think that's what Alan was alluding to. You give just a little bit more direction on that. Specifically, Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sure, can talk about this too, having meetings virtually and what that looks like, and then what our public, because we're a public entity, what the policy is on how many of our members can be meeting on a city-related policy at a time, and if you have suggestions for how we manage that.
Well, the open meetings law is pretty simple on the subject. It's any three or it's a quorum or or any three or more members of any local public body. This is a local public body. Now, the meeting is, let's see here, any meetings at which the adoption of any proposed policy, position, resolution, rule, regulation, or formal action occurs, or at which majority or quorum of the body is in attendance or is expected to be in attendance, shall be held only after full and timely notice to the public. So it doesn't say you can't have these meetings, it just means you have to have them open to the public in one way or another, and after the public has been notified. Now, there is a very narrow exception that really doesn't apply to, it applies to the city council for it. There is the ability to have an emergency meeting, but there's not going to be an emergency meeting of the inclusivity board. So you don't need to worry about that. So really, these things have to be noticed. The good news is the notice requirements are pretty easy to meet. It has to be basically posted 24 hours in advance, just 24 hours, in the city's normal place of posting, which is really easy for the city to do. The only thing you need to do is you just need to let Cody, I imagine it's you, know about when you guys want to have, a group discussion of three or more of you about this public business, and it'll get noticed and it can be done.
And
There isn't
that
really a distinction
added
between-
detail to that is that generally the IT also prefers that we're using city, if we're doing it virtually, that we're using Teams and city supported technology. There's the word. So there's those sorts of details, or we're doing it in a facility where the public can still attend, right?
For sure, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, if you plan on having one of them be in virtual or otherwise, just let Cody know.
And what constitutes a meeting by email? Same thing?
Well, you're looking at whether the adoption of any proposed policy, position, resolution, rule, regulation, or formal action might occur, or at which a majority or quorum of the body is in attendance. So what that means is you shouldn't be making decisions about what to do over email. You shouldn't be, emails should be for sort of coordinating the logistics of who's going to be what and where, that sort of thing. The actual public business or the business of the Inclusivity Board should be done in a meeting that the public can attend and listen to. So you shouldn't be making decisions, you shouldn't be making policy over those emails. Now, if you have an email that includes everybody or three or more people, so long as you're not making, you're just sort of setting up the meeting, you're not making decisions or discussing the public business, that's not a meeting. It is still a document available under the Open Records Act, but it's not a meeting. So essentially the emails should be for setting up the meetings and coordinating that sort of thing. That answer the question?
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for our friend?
Yes, sir.
So we sometimes have subcommittees that are working on things, and we may have documents that we want to review or revise. Are we allowed to have that kind of email exchange where we're reviewing a document and trying to get it to a point where we want to present it to the council or to the board, or is that prohibited under the Open Meetings Act?
Well, I mean, if what you're doing is circulating a document for everybody to discuss later at a meeting, that's not really adopting a policy. If what you're doing is discussing the decision back and forth based on this document, here's what we want to do, that should really take place at a meeting. Because that you're talking about, adopting what is going to end up being the policy or the recommendation of the Inclusivity Board to the City Council. That should really probably be something that you discuss. Now, do it all the time. We say, okay, here's what we want to do. We want to tweak it in this way. And then you can assign it to someone to make those changes to the document, bring it back, and then present it to the board in another meeting. That would be the best practice.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time, Matt. We appreciate the clarification and appreciate you always looking out for us.
I do what I can. I always like to say that the amount of time you spend with a lawyer is inversely proportional to how well your life is going. So I'll let you guys go. But just know that if anything comes up, you can reach out to us for help. And thank you very much. Have a good night.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, friends, our next item of business would be reviewing and approving the previous meeting minutes from our November 9th meeting. Do we have anyone that wants to make a motion? All right, I see Doug's hand. Doug is moved. Is there a second? Okay, it looks like Alan, you're raising your hand as a second. Okay. Perfect. It has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
I see people raising their high hand icons. Thank you. Is there any opposed? And to make sure we're covering all of our bases, does anyone abstain? Okay. All right, hearing no opposition or abstaining, so moved. Thank you very much. Moving on to our next item, Mayor Pro Tem David DeMont. Mr. DeMont.
You guys really filled your agenda for your last meeting for the year as I'm looking at this. Overachievers over here. I'll quickly go through my list because I know you have a lot, and I know Justin's really good about keeping you guys on time and getting you out so you can go back to your business. But a handful of things that it's been busy for us as well. There's a lot of things at the end of the year where we're doing approval of funding that's already been budgeted and things of that nature. Mix that in with the fact we have a new city manager and we're very, very busy. I'm sure Cody is very, very, very busy. No. Recently, though, you probably heard we talked about the lake. We got a security review. Some of that was done public. Some of it wasn't for obvious reasons. Our water and its security is very, very important to the city and the residents of both our city as well as our neighboring cities. We did ask, you may have heard, to have a discussion with our neighbors. It seems like it came across as we just want to talk about boats. That really wasn't the intent. The intent was everything. So hopefully we still have some room for opportunity there because ultimately there's other challenges that aren't motorboats. My personal opinion, but I've heard that echoed from what I think is the majority of council. So either way, that IGA that's in place right now is a 10-year IGA, and we're into 1 year of it. So there's still 9 years left in that agreement that governs that body between us, Thornton, and North Glen. If you want, there you could go listen to that study session that was probably about 4 weeks ago. But good information. The other couple things we went over recently is we had the comp plan brought back to us. That looks like we were all the majority was happy with what we saw there. They're going to do a couple more tweaks. They have to do some stakeholder things that should be coming back to us in March, is what I'm told, for approval. So that's a good movement for us. If you recall, before the last election, city council election, that was brought forward and it died on a 3-3 vote since we didn't have a full body. So I anticipate that passing when it comes back to us in March. They also brought to us the water supply plan. And so annually they'll come back to us and give us a here's where our water supply is matched against any comp plan amendment. So if, for example, you might have had an allocation for a piece of property and either you could use more or less, and because of them changing what kind of use they were going to do with that property. So they true that up for us so we understand the impacts overall to our system. Couple other things I had to mention. The chief of police search is live now as of the last week or so. So the city manager is making that a priority to come in and make sure that we seat a new chief of police at the beginning of next year. So I'm excited about that process. And I know that the folks over at our police department are excited to figure out who their next leader is going to be. We also recently talked about in the meeting this last week about the court and what we're going to do with the future of that. It was a good discussion. If you don't know, our court, original buildings from 1960 something, it was originally a police department and our municipal building, and then in 72 they changed it. Pretty fascinating, good discussion. Ultimately, we're looking at replacing the courthouse with a new courthouse. City Council has given some direction for them to take some steps on design and then looking at how we're going to fund that, because that's not going to be a small dollar amount in order to build a new purpose-built court building for us. But I think it's really important. So we're giving proper customer service and justice to the folks that go through our court system. And then the last thing I had on my list was that we did vote and there was no opposition to shrink your board size down as you guys requested. And so that was approved by City Council to shrink you down to 9 as you guys requested.
Thank you. And I'm sure there were times that they probably wanted to shrink it down by me.
I did not hear anything like that. I think you did
No,
great
I didn't
job.
either. It wasn't you, Justin.
No, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And you know what? I also know that you were working behind the scenes on a lot of different things. I just wanted to say I appreciate your advocacy behind the scenes, even though you don't necessarily get public accolades for those things.
Well, it's all a team effort as far as I'm concerned. I appreciate the work you folks do.
Thank you. All right. Any questions for Mayor Pro Tem DeMott? Okay. Moving into basically, we just had an update, but the bylaws update, City Council approved change to the board size. Would there be anything else to discuss on that, Cody?
Yep,
Okay.
there's 2 items in the bylaws that just need to be updated. And I know in the past you all have reviewed bylaws annually with a small subcommittee. Do you want to do that, or do you, how do you want to move forward? There's 2 parts. It comes to, there's 2 items. One is the quorum piece, and in that quorum piece also outlines alternates and how they serve as voting members in absence of a quorum. And then the other piece is related to alternates as a whole. So there's just 2 places in the bylaws, 4.1 and 5.5, that need a little bit of refreshing.
Great. Any thoughts or ideas? Donna, I see your hand. Thank you.
Donna, don't forget to unmute.
I was trying to get my picture up here. I believe it's been at least 3 or 4, maybe more years since we have reviewed the bylaws as a group. I think it's probably time to do that completely again. And I'm willing to serve on that group if there's a couple of others that want to join me.
I'd be happy to join. I think there's we need a membership clause in the bylaws as well that would spell out just exactly what that entails.
I agree. And the number, because I just was searching for the number of members in here and it's nowhere in here. It's very unclear and doesn't match the city code. So things to keep in mind.
Cody, this is off the subject. I have a really quick question. Why does my picture not appear on the full screen?
I am not sure. Our Teams is strange and finicky, and I have not yet mastered it myself.
Okay, and I haven't
Mayor
figured
Pro
it out. I just thought maybe you had figured it out. Share it with me. Thank you.
You're right.
Same. I'm like, but I see you, and that's the
Yeah.
important thing. Like, so Yeah. Yeah, Donna, I agree. I don't know if we need to make a motion, but we are calling for a specific action item to review the bylaws. So it sounds like a motion may be needed.
I don't know if a motion needs to be made to take on the project. I think maybe when they come back. I don't know.
Well, just to make sure that we are in business, because if we are reviewing our own bylaws, I think since that's an item, I would say just to
I agree with you, Justin. I will move that we establish a 3-person team to evaluate the current bylaws.
Okay.
Of the Inclusivity Board.
Thank you. It's motioned. Is there a second?
Doug and Michelle both raise their hands.
Okay. Thank you. It has been seconded. Is there any discussion?
I did have a question. Who are the members? I got Steve and Beth and Donna will help. Was somebody else going to jump in? Oh, Doug. Okay,
I'll
perfect.
help.
Sorry.
And I can
guess the
I
only
can
dis-
come in as just kind of an honorary kind of check in with you all. So
I guess the only question that I have, I'm sorry for jumping in without being recognized. Discussion is 3 people the right number? How many have we had in the past to do this?
We have usually had 3 people do it, Doug, and that's been plenty. And I would suggest, Justin, we take a vote on this, and then you can, or as the president, or we can, as a group, appoint the 3 members, and that will be official in the records then.
Yep, I think is correct. Because again, they're making recommendations on drafting the policies and the bylaws. They're not going to move forward on the bylaws until they're voted for. Everyone will get a chance to review those changes and be able to make recommendations as an inclusivity board.
Justin, that's a good idea. And if you look carefully at the bylaws, that does specify that the bylaw review committee is the only standing committee in the current bylaws. So we should have one formed.
Yeah. So great points. Any other further discussion?
Go away.
Okay. Hearing none. So let's open it up for a vote. All in favor of establishing a subcommittee, or actually naming a subcommittee, I guess would be the first step, so that they could review the bylaws and update as needed. Okay, seeing 6 hands so far. Okay, is there anyone who is opposed? And if you could speak out if you are opposed, just so we're not confused. Does anyone abstain? Okay, so moved. Thank you very much. So I have heard that Steve, Doug, and Donna, who are all, they happen to be on my screen right now, have volunteered to be a part of that committee. Would anyone else be interested in being a part of that committee? If not, we can.
I would be happy to serve if you want another member.
Okay. Right. Sure. All right. Well, I am fine with, we've done 3 in the past. I think we've had 3 to 4. So I'm good with the 4 of you making the subcommittee, and me just kind of being an honorary member to kind of come in and out as a reminder. Yeah, Doug, please.
Doug, you're muted.
Muted, Doug. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No
The
worries.
motion that we passed specified 3 people. So if we want to add Rich, we need to amend that motion.
Yeah. I mean, if Rich wants to be a part of it, we can amend it. I'm fine. Okay. So if there are 4 of you, could we have a redaction on the initial motion, and could we do a reorder for a new motion, please? Okay, Donna?
Yes, I will tell you why, speaking to the original motion, which I made, when I've done this sort of thing for other organizations, 3 people is a pretty good number. Sometimes when you even, and don't take this personally, Rich, when you add a 4th person, sometimes there can be, it's hard to find meeting times and things like that. So I guess I'm not willing to change my motion, but anybody else that wants to certainly can.
Donna, I am not offended.
I don't want you to be, it's not personal.
Well, here's how we'll move. Then the original order, the original motion will stand. And what will happen if there are more than 3 people interested beyond the people that have said, then I will appoint you all.
Excellent.
Does that seem fair?
That would work.
Okay, and great. Donna, since you've done that work, though, I would ask that you chair that little subcommittee, please.
I will be happy to do that. Thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Great. Okay. All right. So moved. If you are interested beyond the people that have talked tonight, or Rich, if you want to express your interest in that as well, send me names and then we will find an equitable process of selection. Donna will be a standing member at this time. Thank you. All right. Moving on to our Club Q statement. So I had drafted a statement, asked for perspective, asked for feedback. Thank you. You all gave feedback. We drafted a second statement and submitted to you. We were not able to do any kind of business, obviously, and I think we anticipated that pretty well. So after a few good discussions that I had behind the scenes, so that was good. But we do have a draft document that is drafted, is not at this time an official statement from the Inclusivity Board. So it is a statement that is out there as a possibility. I can't make a motion that would violate our laws and bylaws because I'm a chair. I did draft it. So if anyone has a motion that they would like to move it forward as a formal statement from the Inclusivity Board, great. If you want to move a motion to hold on that and have more discussion about it, maybe in a subcommittee, that would be great too. If there are suggestions for changes or drafts, I didn't really hear any beyond the second draft. That's good. So I see Doug and I see Steve, please.
Go ahead, Steve. I just forgot to put my hand down.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I'm happy to make that motion, but I think, Justin, just to be in good order of business, we should open it up for any further discussion at this point before a motion is offered.
Steve, the discussion will come after it's motioned and seconded. That's the order of business. So
Okay.
I won't discuss it. If there's no motion, we won't even waste our time.
Well, I move that we adopt the Club Q statement as drafted and move it forward to the
Second.
city council.
Second.
Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded, and now there's discussion. Stephen, thank you. I appreciate that. I agree. However, if there's no motion to move it forward, there's no need to spend time on it and the agenda. So,
Thank you.
okay. So now it is open for discussion. Does anyone want to discuss? And I will ask to keep this relatively brief. I do want to give the bulk of time to Piper, who does have a presentation of a very important project that's been in the ethers for some time. So what discussion, feedback, comments do we have? Hearing none. Okay. All right. So we've got a motion and a second. We're voting to again submit this draft as a formal statement from the Inclusivity Board. And we will post it on our website and as well as submit it to council just for their records. So all in favor?
Aye.
We're getting pretty good at the voting by virtual. That's good. Is there any opposed? Does anyone choose to abstain? Piper, are you abstaining?
Poor Piper.
Sorry, not abstaining.
Oh, okay, no worries. I wanted to make sure. Thank you so much. Okay, so moved. I will formalize the language, take the draft language off, and I will list our Inclusivity Board members per our previous, it's just every member that, we have. It just kind of gives information about the Inclusivity Board. So that will be sent out to you in the early next week. Cool. Thank you very much, all. Moving on, I would like to move into really safe and welcoming spaces. Piper, I want to give the bulk of the rest of the time to you to discuss just kind of an overview, just to frame a little bit. Piper, I know Doug, Miguel, others have really been trying to push this forward. It's really about ensuring safe spaces and visibility around what we do to support our LGBTQIA+ community members, but also being safe space for all, being inclusive for all. So with that frame, Piper, please, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you. I've prepared a presentation, both a PowerPoint slide and a script to present to City Council about a proposal for businesses to voluntarily buy in to marking their businesses as safe spaces for both people of color and people in the LGBTQIA community. As it is voluntary, I'm hoping that some of the discussions around accessibility for people won't be as difficult. But one of the things that we did discover in researching this proposal, and one of the things that I would like to recommend, is that inclusive journeys be a large part of the proposal, because they are already measuring how inclusive businesses are in the Denver metro area. And they are already working on programs to help the businesses be more inclusive. And they have offered to start out for free to help businesses train to be more inclusive if that's their choice. So I have a draft of this proposal that I would like to present to the City Council. I have to revise that draft. I haven't done that yet. Using your notes, Doug, thank you. And Justin and Cody feedback as well. And so does the rest of, I'm asking a technical question, does the rest of the board then, are we ready for the rest of the board to look at it, Justin?
Yeah, I would say we are. Okay. Piper, I would say have the board, review that presentation for sure.
Okay, cool. And so I can send that out to you next week. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, one thing, Piper, I would wonder maybe what we could do, and I want to run this by you. I don't mean to interrupt, but maybe we could jump on a Zoom. Obviously, we'd have to have this could be like a recorded thing, but we record the presentation and maybe send it out in recorded context so that as you're navigating the recording, our board can get a sense of the entirety of the presentation and then maybe provide some background on inclusive journeys and such with some documentation. That might be a way to kind of give everyone sort of a real time quote perspective of how this would be presented to our council.
That sounds fantastic. I can totally do that.
Great.
I should be able to do that. Let me take a look real quick, just to be sure, because we have entered the crazy time of the year, as you all know. Let's see. I can have this last week of February. Or last week of December. I'm sorry. Last week of December. Can have that out at the last week of December.
Okay, yeah, okay, great. That would be awesome. If you need support, like technically, I'm happy to like, just do a recording as you're presenting or, do some things. I've got some editing software as well, if that helps.
Awesome.
And then I'll make sure that we're cleared, Cody, that the two of us are working on a project to be presented to our inclusivity board. But we can work on like kind of doing the production and then maybe sending out some information about inclusive journeys so that our board is very familiar with their work. And to echo Piper's point, a lot of the structures around how they address whether a space is inclusive and safe for all, they've got those, they've built those out. So there'd be no need for us to reinvent a whole other wheel. And I think that's something, and they definitely have recognition in the work of inclusivity and diversity. So we can get information out to you. Does that sound fair, Piper?
It does.
Okay. I just want to take a moment. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Piper, besides getting the presentation out?
Nope, that'll be it.
Piper has been a champion in patience and navigating this and talking with a lot of individuals and a lot of persons. So I just want to, again, thank you for keeping the light on in times of unclarity and uncertainty. And we appreciate you. And I know this, the presentation, I think, will be really awesome. And I think our board could benefit from a partnership with Inclusive Journeys. So thank you. Okay. Any questions for Piper? All right. So I do want to acknowledge before I get into subcommittee reports, I know that people have to start leaving. Bev, can you hear us? Are you there? I know she's here. Sometimes people have a hard time talking.
She's here. She thumbs up to.
Okay, perfect.
You.
Okay.
Well, if we all turned off our cameras and just left Bev's on.
Oh, that would be, yes, that would be symbolic. Bev, you have served on the Inclusivity Board since its inception in 2016. I know you were also part of some of the discussions as they were planning. This is technically your last formal meeting as an Inclusivity Board member. So Bev, I just want to say that you, from my perspective, your insights, your wisdom, your advocacy, your volunteer work, your amazing, just, conceptual framework of everything that's going on. I just want to say it has been an honor serving with you on this board, and that you will be absolutely missed. So I hope you know the work and the value that you've added and how that's going to be impossible to replace. But we will definitely miss you and hope to work with you, maybe in different capacities, different partnerships. But just really on behalf of the board, I want to say thank you for everything that you've done, everything that you've done behind the scenes. We all know that our work doesn't, stop at 7:30. And Bev is one of the most outstanding volunteers I know in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different areas. So I just want to say thank you, and that you're such a great mentor and a role model for why we do this work.
Thank you so much. Justin, that was great.
And I do believe, Mayor Pro Tem DeMont, did you have anything to add in this right now? I don't want to give anything away.
I just wanted to, I think it's really important to celebrate people and the work that they do for the community. So I know that Bev was one of the founding members of the board, and I know that I was around at least to watch the board be built, even though I wasn't on council yet, but I was already really involved in running for office and getting to just see how the group was formed. And so I just wanted to make sure that you know how much the whole city and city council appreciate the work that you've done, as well as I know my past colleagues and the ones before me appreciate it. I always see you out at all the community events, and I know that your heart is with the work that you do, and I think that should be recognized and just appreciated. I think maybe Cody has something.
I do, but I don't have it with me. That was poor planning.
What-
But we have a certificate for you for all your service and the time that you're here that the mayor signed. We wanted to give you some token where and make sure that you're recognized for all that you contributed. We couldn't be more grateful. And I'm so glad that I see you in the community doing good work. So I know that it doesn't stop here and you're probably just filled this space with other amazing things and can't wait to see more of that. So we couldn't be more grateful for all that you've done for us. And I will make sure to get that certificate to you so that you have it in your next moments. But I'm sorry, since we're virtual, it's not with me. I see Donna's hand up. You're welcome, Beth.
I wanted to, I'm still going to be doing a lot of different activities, as you know, not that I have spent that many hours on inclusivity board work, but I just feel like it was time for me to step aside, and it kind of fits with the plan for not filling positions and by attrition. So that's the thing. Second thing, I just want to comment. One of the things that's occupying a great deal of my time right now is that we lost our CEO at Growing Home to Karen Fox Elwell to the state Department of Early Childhood. She has gotten an excellent job with them. And so I'm chairing the search committee for a new CEO for Growing Home. So I'm sure that will take a lot of time in the next few months. So the plug is that in your networks, if you know people who have experience working in the nonprofit organization management sector, please tell them about this opportunity. And who knows, it's sometimes people that you know that refer others on. So send them our way. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev. Donna, I see your hand, please.
Yes, I've been with Bev through this journey from the beginning also. And I'd like to just take a point of personal privilege and thank her so much for what she has contributed. I'm not going to repeat everything that the rest of you have said, but I echo it and it comes from my heart. Bev, it has been great to work with you, and you have been a real asset, not only to this group, this board, but to this community and to Growing Home. And thank you so much for all you have done. Appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you, Donna.
Great. Thank you very much. So we'll get that certificate over to you, and Bev, I'll try to make an in-person visit with you and maybe bring you some tea or coffee or something just to celebrate you and wish you absolute well. And you know, understand that this isn't the end of our relationship. I think there's great opportunity for maybe more active partnership between our organizations. So yeah, thank you. Is there anything else, any updates, any activities, any things for the good of the order? Oh, Cody, please.
The equitable process, I never know if it's plural, singular, coordinator has officially begun his assignment with us. He's being onboarded. I think it's been, Mayor Pro Tem, what's it been, 2 weeks, maybe 10 days. So very new, but I'm thinking maybe at a future meeting early in 2023, once he starts to learn our ropes a little bit, maybe it'll be a good introduction time. So keep that on our radar for an upcoming opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other items for the good of the order? Well, you know, friends, it is the end of, at least, you know, for us, the 2022 year. We will come back in 2023 fresh and renewed. I know there are a lot of holidays, a lot of observations, over 14 on the calendar, whether you celebrate Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or Yule or Christmas time or a host of other things. You know, just please know that we appreciate all of you. And from the bottom of my heart, I know I'm grateful for each and every one of you on this call right now. I could sit here and talk just nothing but positive things about every single one of you. So I'm just grateful to be a part of your work, and I'm grateful that you're a part of my life, and I'm grateful that we're trying to advocate and do well and good. Thank you, Cody, for all of your work and all of the amazing stuff. Mayor Pro Tem DeMott, again, yeah, I appreciate you. I don't think everyone realizes what you do behind the scenes and how you advocate, not only for our board, but for our citizens and for our residents. And, you know, I appreciate you. And we definitely have to talk offline, not on email, apparently. And we'll go from there. So anyway, it is 7:29. Hearing no other items, we will officially adjourn. Piper, thank you for taking notes. Everyone, thank you very much. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.